Welcome to our channel, Gray Matters. We are two neurodivergent ladies who fixate and need to share, and we've created this channel to do just that. Check out our podcast, Fixate Today, Gone Tomorrow, for some deeper dives. Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. We are here still talking about the Mica Miller case. In our previous video, we did kind of a giant case overview. And what we want to do today is start zooming out at some of the other topics we've covered and how they relate to the case. So we're going to kind of get, I feel like in the last episode, we got kind of granular into the details of the case. And now we're going to start talking about the slightly bigger and then even the huge topics that we think probably cross paths.
A lot of them link directly to a specific video we made. And so we'll try to put some links in and some clips from those videos too.
Right. So let's start talking about big picture things. The first thing I want to talk about is the different kind of abusive behaviors that we've talked about in some of our videos. One of the kind of good things that's come out of this case is that a dialogue's been opened about different forms of abuse in relationships. I want to talk about coercive control. So coercive control, basically, real quick, is different behaviors that are controlling, that can escalate abuse, that basically force somebody to do something they don't want to do or not comfortable with, or, things like that. On June 5th, 2024, Mica's and the Francis family's attorney, Regina Ward, released Mica's list. The list is composed of allegations Mica made against JP of different controlling and abusive behaviors. The allegations came from her journals, as well as conversations that Mica had had with people she trusted. Regina is trying to get that list that she compiled added to the 2020 South Carolina coercive control bill that had been introduced but shelved.
So the allegations were never formally submitted by Mica, and there was no charges ever pressed.
Yes.
So just keep that in mind.
Another element I think we can talk about is, we talked a little bit in the last video about the prevalence of women being institutionalized, kind of based on stepping out of line historically or doing things that their husbands deem unseemly. And there is a historical precedent to that. And we have also seen a number of women in intimate partner relationships who have, I'm trying to think of the YouTube friendly ways of saying it, guys. There have been a number of deaths of women who were harmed by their intimate partner, but the death was ruled to be self-inflicted. Oftentimes, when investigators are talking to the partner of the person who has been murdered or died, the perpetrator will be able to say, they had all these mental health problems. They were depressed. They were blah, 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 blah. And it's your instinct to believe the partner of someone, right? It's not, I don't even want to necessarily say that investigators did a bad job in some of these cases. It's just instinctually the human response is to believe a woman's husband who's saying, yeah, this was all happening. The issue comes when the investigators take that person's word over even circumstantial evidence, crime scene, all those kind of different things. That's when the issue comes in, when the perpetrator is believed over crime scene evidence, things in the victim's life, those types of things. I do think for some investigators, it is easier to believe the simpler option and move on.
Well, in the case also going back to coercive control, that's kind of a tough subject. It's complicated because it encompasses several facets of one's life. I will say that we actually got some opportunity to speak with Regina Ward, who was Micah Miller's um, attorney, and into a little bit more depth about this. I will say I was really proud to she actually used one of our videos, our coercive control videos at a talk she gave. So that was kind of cool when she told me that. Also, we have heard more ever since this conversation started. I think that we've heard more people come forward and understand that what coercive control is, and found out that that
Yeah.
they may have been victims. Um, and so
Yeah.
awareness has increased since this case.
The last form of abuse that I think touches on this but opens up a bigger conversation is image based sexual assault. And where this came in is that JP would so often threaten Micah with exposing intimate images and videos if she didn't kind of fall in line with him. And as we talked about last video, he did in fact release a photograph before her death that was meant just for him and shouldn't have been shared with anybody. And that is a crime. Um, I think that too now is getting a wider conversation, and the victim blaming for image based sexual assault is, I hope, going down. And placing the blame on the person who releases an image is where the blame should be.
And we definitely know that this was something that was a concern of Micah's. We know that even from her 911 call she had placed, in which she expressed concern about her laptop being in the home while there was JP and others were there, and her knowledge of the pictures that she did not want shared with others. So we do know this was something
Yeah.
she was continue or had been concerned about.
All right. So I would like to, let's move on. We're going to pivot a bit and let's talk about South and North Carolina. I know it's kind of a weird pivot, but it all relates. So, South and North Carolina, uh, the Lumber River runs through both states and goes all the way to the Atlantic Ocean.
Micah Miller's body was discovered um, basically right off of the Lumber River, at what was called the Lumber River State Park. And actually, you can navigate from North Carolina through South Carolina and really all the way out to the Atlantic Ocean, and it's very desolate. It's very dark. And probably would only be navigated by people who are familiar with that area, so which I think plays a part in kind of as we build our theory on some things that can happen. It's important to know that about that river.
Another important place in this whole story is Florence, South Carolina. Florence ends up being kind of a central point on the I-95 interstate highway. We will kind of revisit that shortly, but it's important because this is where Wayne Miller initially started planting his churches and schools, even back to the 70s. He was in this area.
It's also a well-known, just in general, a well-known hub of criminal activity.
Yeah. I think Florence and then in North Carolina, Lumberton, which is where the state park is, are two of the uh, most heavy crime populated areas in the states, certainly.
And I can vouch for Lumberton. I did go visit Lumberton when I was there, and um, yeah, it definitely felt
Uncomfortable.
yeah, to say the least. Yeah, it definitely had a feel about it that left me not feeling very safe.
Yeah. Well, this leads us to a discussion of some of the known trafficking routes. And when we talk trafficking, it's all the kinds of trafficking you can think of. Um, Lumber River intersects major railway in Lumberton, North Carolina, the I-95 highway that we just talked about, and Around that area are also a number of different railway routes as well as regional airports.
And even beyond regional airports, there's also a lot of, like, grass landing strips.
Yeah.
A friend of JP has a piece of land, that it backs to the river, and it is said that he may have a grass landing strip on there. For those of you who are familiar with the Alec Murdaugh case, their property has a landing strip on it. So there's quite a few in the area for small planes.
As for the I-95 highway, it runs completely up and down the East Coast from Florida to Maine, and historically has been known as a major trafficking corridor, if not the major trafficking corridor in the United
Yeah,
States.
and Florence is exactly halfway between Miami and
And
New York City, which is
even recently, this is still coming out, but Myrtle Beach is actually one of the biggest locations for trafficking and other crimes in the
probably
United States.
countries. They have some of the most lenient um, financial transfer laws there, and and there's actually even been some of the Mexican drug cartels who have been rumored to be um, heavily involved in the area of Myrtle Beach. So
Yeah. All right. Lumber River State Park, as we said, heavy crime area. The Lumber River itself is a 115-mile long Blackwater River. And I have to just say it again. Talking this video that we did about the park set me on such a crazy like wormhole of how cool Blackwater rivers are. Like I just still can't let it go. And then I ended up watching like all of the content creator, her name's Geo Rutherford's channel about, it's called Spooky Lakes, but it's all like the weird waterways in the world, mostly in the United States, but all over the world. And so I got a lot of information about Blackwater rivers from her. But then I was like, I'm obsessed with creepy water now.
I actually was able to visit the Lumberton State Park when I went out to Myrtle Beach. And I will say, nothing I have seen or done has changed my thoughts on this case as much as my visit to that park, which I
Yeah.
think is saying a lot. Um,
Yeah.
the moment I stepped in that park, I was extremely uncomfortable. It was evident. Now, I was there in the winter, not in the summer. So the visitor traffic was much less than in the summer months, which almost made it more evident that the people coming and going from the river seem to be doing so um, with nefarious intent. There was definitely something going on around me that I felt very uncomfortable with. And in fact, saw somebody walk out specifically with a duffel bag and what looked exactly like a wrapped up uh, package of drugs, essentially. Yeah, when I was once I went there, and for those of you who don't know, River State Park is where Micah Miller's body was found. Um, it wasn't the kind of place that I had pictured, that I think most of us had pictured or heard of. It was very uncomfortable, and I felt unsafe there to the point where I had gone all the way out there to visit the park. I probably spent 10 minutes walking down a trail and just felt so uncomfortable. I felt a need to get out of there. So, just interesting aside, yeah, that really changed how I felt about this, and I wonder why specifically she had was associated, knew, or was directed to go to this park.
Two
I will
things.
also say,
First, JP has said that, in conversations that he had had with Micah, she said that if she ever were to take her life, she'd do it at that park. But her family's like, there's no connection to that park. It's not beautiful. It's not, I mean, it's not like a, kind of how you're describing it, not like a serene place, a peaceful place.
yeah, and in the summer, I mean, I will say it's probably a much more family oriented, better environment, more beautiful environment in the summer. I also think that's why in the summer it becomes very good to hide this activity that in the winter was more obvious, because there weren't families and such there.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then the other thing I want to mention quick is Robbie Harvey spoke to somebody, and I don't remember the context at all. I just remember what was said. And this person said, if anybody's going to harm somebody, it's going to be at like that park, and that park is that's the only reason to go. Is if you have bad intentions with somebody, you're going to take them to that park. So let's talk about a little bit about the area that Mica's body was found. There's an area in the river known as Griffin Whirl, and you actually got a really good video of it. It's actually pretty cool.
I did, and I'll try to add it. I'll try to throw it in here, to show you guys.
Yeah, it's this spot in the river where the water creates a whirlpool effect, and it's something about the currents and different temperatures of the water, but it's just a cool spot. But this spot is it doesn't create, but it's in a slough in the river. Um, the slough area.
Actually, like,
Okay.
the slough is sort of right behind it.
Yeah.
It's right behind the whirl space, and, the reason for the whirl, is because it's where 2 rivers, like, come together. They break off in different directions, and I believe the slough used to be more of a river. It has since kind of like swamp that leads into shallow, like, pond water, I suppose. Um,
Because it is like it's an area that's covered in trees and fallen branches, but also there are cypress trees in that area specifically, which create something called cypress knees, which is basically just knots from trees that stick out of the water. So basically, all of that to say, it is a treacherous area to navigate unless you know what you're doing.
I will also say that it is much closer to, like, the public overlook area. I would assume in the summer would be heavily trafficked. Again, winter, no one there, but it is extremely close. So any gunshots would have been easily heard by many people because it is not far. And there was a gentleman named, Johnny Jacobs who was, fishing right outside of this slough area, right by this Griffin's Whirl, and he was one of the, first people to call 911. Um, he incidentally, lost his life, within the months after, this all came to light. But where he described the point where his boat would have been, where he would have been in his boat fishing, in the time in the winter that I was there was a boat in exactly that same place. Trying to make it look like he was fishing, but it didn't seem real genuine. Almost seems like it could be an area for a lookout person. That's just a theory or guess, but it is something that's noticeable if you're in that area.
All right. All right, we're going to zoom out a little bit again, and we're going to talk about the different kind of legal issues that are around the case again. So this is still all kind of things that are directly related to Mica's loss. First, I want to talk about the police involvement. Um, if you listen to True Sunlight at all, you know how they feel about generally the police in South Carolina. Um, Corruption could be some things as simple as taking the easy answer and just running with it. They make FOIA requests incredibly difficult. Um, a lot of misogyny in both the government, the state government there, and it seems like the police. So, just that is what we're kind of working with.
Additionally, alleged corruption of the court system,
Yeah, yeah.
also and judges.
So, Micah had reported abusive and stalking behaviors from JP multiple times and was told multiple times that the police weren't able to help. A lot of the behavior was corroborated by JP's ex wife, Allison, as well. Allison had even reported JP for inappropriate behavior with underage girls at the church, and nothing really came of it. Of JP sharing the nude photograph of Michael wasn't taken seriously, with the police going so far as saying that because a part of the image was blurred, it didn't fall under uh, being criminal to share. It wasn't considered a nude image by the law. They also said there wasn't enough evidence to prove that JP had done it when he was the only person who had the image, but whatever. JP and his father have consistently gotten away with bad behavior just for years. JP was able to cultivate a relationship with Horry County Police, and he was even given a special badge with the word pastor on it that he kept in his car. Since Mica's death, JP has called 911 to report just about everything. He's been able to allegedly send threatening texts to content creators, the protesters. The police hasn't stopped anything. Nothing's been stopped. But beyond this, he actually figured out that he was able to abuse legal documents and court systems to control Mica, as well as just about anybody who's gone against him. Wayne, his father, has blatantly broken laws. He's been caught breaking laws. And while he was convicted, the consequences were really minimal for the crime. So it just appears that both men have learned that they can get away with doing these terrible things and they're not going to be held accountable by law enforcement or the court system in the area where they are.
Traffic tickets, like multiple, like 10 to 20 that JP had over the years, with seemingly minimal consequences.
Yeah. And a lot of the players in this case also, the male players in the case, have a great
Yes.
deal of traffic tickets.
Yep. That you'd think would mean, possibly even their, driver's license would be suspended, but it doesn't seem as if that has happened in these
No,
cases.
it appears that they pay a fine and move on. So, I want to talk a little bit about seized property. This is property that, in the course of an investigation, the police or the court system takes from a person as evidence or something to look into. In South Carolina, police and prosecutors are allowed to sell the property that's been seized and keep up to 95% of the profits. There's no oversight, and they don't have to report what the money was spent on or how much they spend. And in the area, it's known as policing for profit.
And this includes if there's cash or large sums of money in the vehicles, um, that they seize. The police department is able to keep that money and use it for their own purposes. And there's also been cases in the area of police officers who have been caught stealing, these items or this money,
All right,
which is
let's move on to notaries. Our favorite topic, very interesting. We're all interested in notaries. I just love that we have an entire video about notaries. I'm like, if you didn't know what this case was, that's the most boring thing in the entire world.
every one of these boring things seems to take us down a whole rabbit hole of knowledge
Yeah.
and research, which turn out to be really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and this is one that I feel like if we ever know what really happened, this is a huge puzzle piece that will make so much sense. And I think this is actually a really important piece. So it is pretty easy to become a notary in South Carolina. You basically fill out a form and pay like 25 bucks. Micah had become a notary in January 2024. My guess is becoming a notary is a pretty low stakes way of just making a little bit of extra money. And so my theory was it was just she's trying to get on her feet. It's just another simpler way to do it.
I'm a little more sinister about this,
Yeah.
and I believe it had to do with whatever illegal behavior was going on. And I believe she was probably one of the only people in this group that did not have any kind of criminal background.
Yeah.
So she may have been one of the only ones who was able to. She may have been coerced into doing that so that others could use the stamp and her access to one.
Yeah. So in that February, when she was involuntarily hospitalized, JP gained possession of her notary credentials and the stamp. Mica was so worried about this that she actually reached out to the South Carolina Secretary of State to alert the office that she wasn't in possession of the stamp, and she was concerned. She said in the email, concerned that it would be used fraudulently by her husband and needed to figure out the next steps. And basically, they noted it. So the next notary we're going to look at is JP's former attorney, and I believe probably still buddy, Tom Winslow. Tom is the gentleman who has property that runs right up against the Lumber River State Park. Um, he has dabbled in AI, which came into I haven't heard that talked about too much anymore, but when the 911 call was first released on the day Micah died, there was some conversations about could AI have generated this? I don't know how I don't know how much I believe that, but everything feels worth mentioning in this case. Um, but Tom Winslow advertised notary services on his business website and his personal social media. He is an attorney, so he was making pretty good money. I don't, and this, I don't know how accurate this is, but in my experience, I've not seen notary service um, advertised on like a high powered attorney's website as like a service
Yeah,
they
and it was
provide.
yeah, it was something, yeah, that we were able to see. Yeah, on his website, it specifically said that he has does notary service, which again, it's an important service, but generally not something you require an attorney to do. That's
It seems like a clerk in their office, in his office, could be the notary, so that's,
right.
yeah.
And specifically, it was under him and a Facebook post, his Facebook advertisement, maybe completely coincidentally. But right after we pointed it out, that came off
Yeah.
of his personal profile. So,
Yep. And I think you have to dig on his website to find it as a service. I haven't checked it in a
yeah,
long
I think,
time.
yeah, I think he took the word off, like took the word notary off, and then ultimately, like, I think just took down like that page or whatever
Yeah.
completely. So,
Well, there had been rumors that Winslow used to charge $500 for fraudulent notary services under the table. This kind of leads into a lot of the questions about the signature and the notarization of Micah's power of attorney document, which Winslow's law firm oversaw. Some of the dates are confusing. The witnesses that are listed don't correspond with the dates that it says it was signed. There's a lot of questions about this
correct.
document.
Since he Tom Winslow did own land close to the spot where Micah's body was found. There was a lot of thought that maybe she was on his way or was lured there under the guise of signing her divorce papers, and he was involved in that way. I am gonna say after visiting there, the land he owns on the river, I don't think it has a home on it. I don't think he lives there. It's pretty remote. So I don't quite think that that's the case. I don't believe it's coincidence that is he owns that land there, and I think, that's, something we definitely explore more, but I don't necessarily think it was luring,
Yeah. And it doesn't appear that there's access from the park to his land or vice versa. Like you
there
have to,
is from the river.
but not like she would be lured. She would have been lured to the park, which would have been weird to be lured to see him at the park and not to if he had a house there or his land. You know what I mean? And it would be
But I
like if
think
he,
it is worth noting that
oh
his
yeah,
land backs to the river
yes,
and that there is river access to his land. Um, and also, actually, there's landing boat entries point that is fairly close to his
oh
land,
yeah, I
which
forgot
again
about
is
that.
about 10 miles,
Hmm.
downstream, I believe.
All right. Well, the last notary I want to talk about relates to Mica's 2024 hospitalization. Um, so, Wakama Mental Health Center therapist Faith Green admitted that she had been kind of bullied and pressured by JP to sign documents that would involuntarily hospitalize Mica without actually having seen her or speaking with her, which is not protocol. You have to see somebody before you commit them. Um, and this document was notarized by the director of the South Strand location of Wakama Mental Health Center, Katrina K. Presley. I don't know if this is anything, but I would feel uncomfortable notarizing a document for the place that I was a director of. I don't know if there's any legality to that, if there's anything like that, but I I would be concerned of any conflict of interest. I just would probably ask somebody else to notarize documents related to my own work.
Agreed. And we just kind of see this pattern of possibly corrupt notary usage
Yeah.
in the area. So
Yeah.
just worth noting.
Let's move on to money laundering.
I love money laundering.
I know you love money
Not
laundering.
personally doing it,
No,
but
learning about it.
yes.
Um, so there have been many, many reports and rumors about JP's involvement with money laundering. If we go with the thought that JP is participating in money laundering, Crocodile Rocks is the most likely avenue that he would use through his partnership with Mark Kaufman. As we said before, Kaufman is a pilot, and he donated, I don't know, Solid Rock Church a private plane. So it's under, I believe it was his. It was still listed as owned by him. To this, speaking of the church, churches are considered nonprofit organizations and they don't have to pay taxes, meaning they have far less oversight in terms of their finances. Because I don't think the government super cares if they don't pay taxes.
They don't pay nearly the attention to them. IRS is not involved
Yeah.
since they do have that designation.
Yeah. So is it possible that JP was using both Crocodile Rocks and the church as fronts for money laundering? Mica had reported to a friend that JP was bringing home bags of cash, and then that cash would then go to the church. Like he would bring it with him to church the next day, and then it was gone.
This is one of the keys that we've zeroed in on from the beginning
Yeah.
is this thought that there was some kind of money laundering connection. And specifically, as you said, if he's bringing home cash, Mike is aware that he's bringing home cash and mentions it to someone. And then where's that money going?
Yeah.
The thought is then it was being mixed in with the tithes, presumably from the church and and initially we just sort of thought it was a way to get by taxes,
Hmm.
and maybe it was just the profits from Crocodile Rocks. But I think with time we've kind of grown to think it's a little bit more than just that. It was
Yeah.
it was a little bit more advanced than just being a way to avoid taxes and such.
Yeah.
But that was our initially how we what we really thought was going on, and that was the crux to this story. From then, it's definitely grown.
Yeah. And I just had this thought. If at the peak, if that's what's happening, if money is going from Crocodile Rocks to their home, to the church, and JP lost a lot of church members from his first divorce, there was a concern that another divorce would cause more of a loss of members. But if you're trying to put a large amount of money kind of through your system you've created and you've lost a lot of church members, that's going to be suspicious that you are. you have, tons of money going through, but fewer members. Um, so that just something that occurred to me.
Well, I think that's a good point, and let me tell you something that I've thought about. It has been alleged that, and I actually think maybe JP had said this directly, that the church had raised $1 million in a year to buy some new property to expand. Um, I I calculated that out. I mean, I think that the church was known to have 300 to 400 members at its peak. That would be donations of over $3,000 per person.
Wow.
Something I'd never really thought about before,
Yeah.
but that's a lot of money.
And I consider, from what I've seen of the church, which obviously wasn't in person or anything, but it reminds me a lot of my church, which isn't small, but is not big. And putting it that way, like, I can't imagine us raising $1 million. Like, that's wild. Try just the
Yeah,
members.
never had thought yeah, did not think about it at the beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, I did actually get to visit the church,
Mhm.
and I did cause some upheaval when I said that honestly, the members of the church seemed like very decent, kind people. And I know some believe that that they are enabling JP. Honestly, I don't think they really fully understand what's going on that much. Um, we don't realize that, but we look into this all the time. They don't, but most seem to be very genuine and welcoming. And yeah, I place no blame. I would say, yeah, it was just a very nice crowd of people. I don't think there was there's anything bad with the regular congregation. That does not mean within it there are some questionable people maybe doing some illegal things. And again, they were good, kind people. They didn't seem like the type of people who would have thousands and thousands of dollars to donate to a church.
Right.
You know, as most churches do not have.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of leads us to the question of, is JP using the tithes from the honest church members that believed in him for his own purposes?
And I think that's kind of where we started, right? Thinking this was a guy who is taking advantage of the tithing of his church. But I think then with time we've thought, okay, no, 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 no. It goes beyond that. This was just, and that's when we talk about this money coming through from Crocodile Rocks, possibly. Um, and that's when kind of thought it was the funds, right, of their profits. But then with time, I kind of would almost believe that it is even beyond that, and that it's money that's when you launder money, you wanna move it through as many, um, legitimate businesses as possible. And so I believe it could even be more than if it is happening, and this is just our theory, that it could be money from the outside going through Crocodile Rocks, going then through the church.
Well, and then that brings us to the next thing I want to talk about. Um, because between JP, Mark Kaufman, Charles Randall, Trisha Ross, Susie Skinner, even, and just a number of others, there are so many LLCs and property acquisitions that are tied to JP.
Sales going back and forth,
Yep.
sales being under, a lot of this was donated or this was sold to us at a very low rate, all of which again are signs of money laundering,
Hmm.
trying to making legitimate sales but using that as a way to shuffle illegal funds.
Yeah. On top of that, the church, I don't know now because I know the name of the name is changed of the church. I don't know if he dissolved Solid Rock Church or Solid Rock, I think, whatever, the LLC name. I don't know that he dissolved that or not as like a business, but the
But there
church,
have at least been several different names, several
yeah,
different um, LLCs that have that it has undergone
yeah,
since this began.
yeah.
Um,
And
Also,
I
yeah, like Charles Randall also had multiple churches. um, under his name, um, and I believe even some of the additional, um, I don't remember if Mark Kaufman or Tom Winslow or the others involved in the
Yeah.
case we've spoken about have even had churches listed
Yeah.
under them.
Yeah. Um, I know, and I asked the question if that was dissolved or not because Solid Rock Church had been listed as the owner of most of JP's assets. So his house, the cars, which there's a lot of cars, um, and things like that, was listed under the church, just the church owned it. Um,
So the church, it seemed to have, as if it was possible, was using as a front for other activity, or at least, yeah, it could have been allegedly. Everything we're saying is our theories, by the way. So,
and
um,
that's why we have that disclaimer at the end of
yeah,
every
take it
single
with
video.
take it with a grain of salt. Just our
Mhm.
theories.
So, as we've discussed a bit already, Tom Winslow has property on the edge of Lumber River State Park and possibly has access to an airstrip or some side of landing strip area field. And with his attorney position as an attorney, he could be using that negatively in helping people dealing with criminal activities.
He could just be turning a blind eye to activity that is maybe happening there. Um, that would be possible too.
Possibly
He's
helping
not actively
facilitate
involved. Yeah.
or facilitating things with signing
Yep.
documents, notarizing things, and not asking questions.
Or all of the above.
Yeah. And finally, JP's father, Wayne Miller, has traveled the world under the guise of launching churches and schools. He has access to the trafficking routes, especially overseas, with trying to launch the ministry in Pakistan that is still pretty active in that area. His Facebook group, Wayne Miller and Friends, is interesting, but there's a lot of activity in Pakistan still. And with his title of pastor and especially missionary, he's pretty free to move, and he's not really got like he's not married. He's not really has to report to anybody. He's just kind of free to go where he pleases.
And considering in the past he was also charged with labor trafficking, um, as well as other crimes of his past, again, just seems like he had minimal consequences
Yeah.
after those.
So the last thing I want to talk about with the kind of legal stuff are questions that we have raised in some videos already. Um, has JP taken a plea deal? Could Mica be have been a confidential informant? Is JP currently a confidential informant? And has JP been given immunity in exchange for information? Um, the caveat of that one is most deals require that a person who's been given the deal cannot lie or be dishonest about any of the details of crimes. And JP doesn't have the best track record for that, but he does have a pretty good track record of talking in circles and talking around things. So I think he would actually have a really difficult time being completely honest with law enforcement if this was the case.
But there have been some things that have made us question whether he still could be in that position.
Yeah,
One is when, at least when I spoke to him, he was very, very insistent that everything he said was the truth.
yeah,
Don't mean to keep repeating it. He spoke around things. He found ways to change subjects. He didn't answer things. So I'm not saying he was being truthful uh, in a complete way, but
yeah,
but he did not directly. lie, according to him, and honestly said this to me. I can't even tell you how many times he made such a point of letting that be known. That doesn't mean he said that at the beginning or throughout the investigation through that he had been honest, but was making it very clear that from that point on, like from that point, he was being honest. Also, he kind of had a questionable when he had the FBI raid at his home. Um, it didn't seem like he was surprised by it.
Yeah.
Um, it, it seems like he was pretty comfortable with it. First of all, it was a large raid, a very
Mhm.
big raid for a man, who had just been stealing from the church or whose wife passed away over the state line. Clearly, there was some more to it. I think he but he wasn't surprised, he wasn't taken off guard. In fact, I think it was reported that he went to Starbucks
Yeah.
and, they came and served him the warrant there. So, makes me think, could there be some working together on that?
Mhm.
Uh, Final thing I will say is that he did when I was with him, he did talk to me about, being in talks with Universal,
Oh, yeah.
which I am presuming is some kind of a movie deal, documentary deal. Don't know. It just didn't seem like a person who was worried about the legal consequences that he was about to face.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. Could be, but if that was the case, something feels like maybe he had made a deal to bring forth information that he had
He
in
wasn't
order
worried about
to.
his future.
I don't think so.
Mhm.
At least too worried.
All right, we're going to zoom out one more level and we're going to talk about the different kinds of trafficking. We've touched on a lot in our videos, and I just want to kind of very briefly say why this could be a thing in this case. It doesn't necessarily mean it
And what
is.
we're saying is not that we necessarily think, first of all, JP, Micah were directly involved in these things.
Right.
There was just definitely some questionable activity going on around them um, in their orbit.
Yeah.
And a big part of our channel has been just kind of looking at what those activities may have been,
Right.
and also to educate ourselves and to others about what's going on in the world. But yeah, we're not directly saying that anyone was specifically involved. We just think there are things that might have been happening
Yeah. Yeah.
in their world.
And there's little things that are weird, I guess. That maybe they're nothing, maybe they're something. So if you want to learn about the ins and outs of these different forms of trafficking, please go watch the videos we've done. What I just want to do here is kind of say what the weird thing is. That could be something, could be nothing. So I want to start with medication and drug trafficking. If I'm being honest, I think if there's trafficking involved that is linked to any sort of money laundering, I think this is the easiest one for JP to somehow be involved with. Doesn't mean it is. Just that's my thought. Is he's got enough links in his chain for this to be something that he could be involved with.
Yeah, and it could just be the money laundering part at the end.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
yeah, I mean, it would probably be that piece, but bringing ill-got gains
Yeah.
from drug
Um.
trafficking.
So first, Wayne Miller originally lived in Florence, South Carolina. In Florence, there is a pharmaceutical plant that makes a component of medications called API, and I already don't remember what that means. We have the video eventually. um, but it's the only one in the country that makes that component, and most of the time, that component is made in China, I believe.
This particular facility makes precursor
That's it.
drugs, like the precursors that will be made into actual medications. It's it's in Florida. I don't know, it just surprised me,
Yeah.
and these precursors are normally brought in from China to make fentanyl,
Yeah.
or made into fentanyl in in China and in Mexico. It has never been talked about that in the
Yeah.
US we actually produce fentanyl.
Hmm.
But it is something I would like to look into. After everything else we have seen there, I just think it's so strange that we have this company right there
Yep.
that specifically makes drug precursor products for medications.
And if it's not linked to this, it is on that spot that we have talked about over and over. That is like a central spot on I-95. And with the,
Yeah, and that's it. Like we're just go like what started as the Micah Miller case. This is why we've been on it for so long. No, I mean we don't think necessarily this is directly linked, but there's stuff going on in the area, and it just brings us out to different rings of wanting to investigate and understand what
mhm,
could be going on.
yeah, the other drug or medication that is highly trafficked are steroids. There have been allegations that JP was giving Micah testosterone, with or without her knowing. And JP and Micah's personal trainer, Dan Figler, has been convicted of dealing steroids and illegally selling steroids.
I think along with other crimes in the
Yeah.
past too.
Yeah. He's not a good guy. All right. Weapons trafficking. So the US is the largest exporter of weapons in the world. That is the main export. And I think like the second highest export are empty shipping containers back to back to uh the companies that are then packing them to send back to the US. JP was a gun owner. He had quite a few firearms. I don't think that's unusual in our country, though. So, Micah was licensed to have a firearm. I don't know. Um, but in terms of the legit, like what's logical for the US to be exporting, it's firearms.
And especially, I think the connections that we've heard with Kenya and Pakistan,
Yep.
there's a lot of arms trafficking through there. There's also something called straw buying, which we get into, which is where basically a bunch of individuals will go purchase firearms, and just one or two at a time, and then basically somebody's consolidating and um, uh, acquiring those for illegal purposes to then be smuggled to outside of the country or wherever they.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to what would be the worst possibility: human trafficking. We already know Wayne Miller has participated in labor trafficking, which is a form of human trafficking. He was convicted. There is no denying that there was labor trafficking in JP's orbit.
Of international students, it must be said.
Yes, yes, thank you. And the students were adults, young, but adults.
I was gonna say we also have the 911 call
Mm-hmm.
placed by one of JP's neighbors that indicates that there was questionable large number of Asian women, young Asian women, who were staying in JP's home and
Yeah.
maybe had been for a while, kind of some uh, blinds being or the paper up in the windows so as people couldn't see in. Um, just gave vibes of something again, maybe questionable in the human trafficking realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've not heard anything beyond that 911 call of if that was fabricated or if that was followed up on. Um yeah, I don't, it's just another weird thing. So we're going to switch over to Wayne. We've talked quite a bit about the siblings who came to the US when Wayne fled Pakistan. They're adults. One, the man, he's the person that is alleged to perhaps be in a relationship with Wayne. But the man and his sister are musical performers, and Wayne tours them. He tours with them. He's like their manager, it seems like, and he's making money from their work. Certainly, it's another strange thing. They're active on the Wayne Miller and Friends Facebook group. They post videos a lot of their performances and things like that. I have a lot of questions about what's happening there.
I will say that I did meet them. When I was at Myrtle Beach, they did come to lunch with us. Um, they sat at a different table with Wayne. I also saw them perform in the church, and it's hard to not sound terrible when you say this, but I don't think they were terribly talented to be on the level of touring. They did, if any of you have heard Micah singing in church, they were certainly um, not on that level. So
Got it.
take that for what it will. They seemed like very decent people. I did not interact with them personally, but I did see them and did go to lunch with them.
Yeah. I think for them, I have concerns about their well being, let's say.
Agreed.
All right. Lastly, we are working on this video right now. It'll hopefully be out soon. Non government organizations and unaccompanied minors. Wayne's legal history alone opens it up to the possibility that there are issues with unaccompanied minor migrant children.
This is a very big topic. And to be clear, we do not think this is anything that it would be happening close to necessarily
Yeah.
JP or Micah, but it's a big topic. I think it's something we need to know about as a
Yeah.
nation. And just big picture, it is when we have children, migrant children who are unaccompanied, and they are at the U.S. border. They get put into I don't want to call it detention center, a holding center, and then they are basically low level, low key fostered out. Basically, people come in and say they want to be sponsors, and if they are, at least at the beginning, if they just there was not a whole lot of background checks. It's gotten better, but
Yeah.
definitely an avenue, an easy avenue for human trafficking and child trafficking to begin.
Yeah. And I think this is bolstered by the questionable schools that are open by the Millers.
Yeah, a lot
Um,
of connections to schools, a lot of
yeah.
connections to immigrants, and like you said, past conviction for
Hmm.
labor trafficking.
Yeah. That's kind of a summation of everything, would you say? Not, I'm sure not everything, but
I'm just going to throw in one more thing on the child trafficking. I did directly ask JP about that. He said he didn't know what I was talking about. Then Nikki and I did ask him on the phone about that. And he did say something that stuck out to us. He
yes.
said he had never before heard about that, but something weird happened, and somebody had recently spoken to him about a young lady. If, from an Asian country. I
I
can't
think
remember exactly where he said.
Malaysia.
Malaysia,
I
okay,
think
who
so.
was formerly abused, assaulted, and was coming under the care. The church was going to help her out. And it was just something that he was thought was very strange that had happened right after we had asked about him. So
Yeah.
again, that was just like a little red flag of like a weird thing.
Yeah.
So
I forgot to even mention that. So yeah,
yeah,
that's
there's
that's
so much.
it's a question, let's say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we should wrap it up. Um, if there's anything we may have left out, please leave us a comment. Um, there's so much that it's hard to know if we've touched on everything. Um,
It's a hard case to summarize.
Yeah, and there are so many, as I said, weird things that could be something, could be nothing. Um, but I think we should, at this point, be very open minded about what could have led to Micah's death. And it could be big.
And if not, we just need to educate ourselves around these things going on in our world and in our
Yeah,
community. So,
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. And yeah, we'll hopefully see you for our next video.
all right, bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you for listening. Please comment, like, and subscribe. You can also check out our podcast, Fixate Today, Gone Tomorrow, for more content. Have anything you'd like us to fixate on? Reach out and let us know. Thanks for joining us. Disclaimer: we are not investigators, journalists, detectives, law enforcement, or historians. We are two neurodivergent ladies who just hyperfixate. Please do not take our opinions and ideas as statements of fact. All allegations are just that. We are not accusing anyone of anything, simply offering our interpretation of what we've researched.